You're listening to Bellwethers podcast with Matthews Joseph.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into Bellwethers podcast this morning or evening, wherever parts of the world that you're listening from. Today, I have Joshua Andrews with me, and people who are in Dallas or people who are in India or in Muscat knows who Joshua Andrews is. He's been leading a movement called Overflow Muscat over there, and it is amazing what they are doing, releasing covers, doing a lot of stuff through Instagram Reels and doing a lot of live interactions there locally as well. Joshua used to be in Dallas, and he still got that Texas accent. But yeah, and I am so excited to have him over here. All right, without further ado, let's put our hands together. Welcome, Joshua Andrews.
Thank you, bro. So good to be here with you. Excited for this one.
Yes, same here as well. So Joshua, I mean, I know I gave a pretty small introduction, but why don't you just tell a bit about yourself?
Man, that's one of the hardest questions to answer. Like, tell us about yourself. The one question we hope that we never get to answer. And I think you've done a pretty good job. And yeah, so there's a lot of things I think, man. And when we normally ask people to tell us about themselves, we normally talk about what we do. And sometimes I try not to answer the question because sometimes talking about what we do can be the lowest form of who we really are. That's just an expression of who we really are. And so I know that's it's a little intense over there, but in simple words, if you ask me, man, I love to get my identity from again from God. Just a simple thing, I'm a child of God, and I love God and I love people, and the different ways that I do that is through music, is through overflow. All these different aspects, avenues are more of how I express who I am. So, and the avenues can be changing every day. It can be different ways. It can be all these different things. But on a simple level, man, Josh and love God, love people, child of God.
Okay, that's super nice. That's super niche, and I don't think anybody has given me such a short description or an introduction ever on this podcast, and I love that. So, and I just when you mentioned this, you said about identity, right? And I really want to bounce off that because I mean, today I think today like our generation has a big identity issue. They don't know who they are, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know where they're in life. And but I've seen like a lot of people like you or different other people, like we've seen in Dallas or all throughout the world, having figured that out, that identity is given to them by God, and
Yeah,
we are the son or daughter of God, and that's
yeah,
who we literally are. How do
yeah.
you feel about that? How did you actually identify yourself? How did you find that identity in God?
Man, I think the moment we, and as you said, it's very true. Like the biggest problem that I think our generation is facing is an identity crisis. Because if you really know who we are, half the problems that we are facing would go away. Most of the problems come from not really knowing who we are. And I think for me, like we grow up, like let's take even if it's church or community, we're like, we study, become a doctor, and when we do all the work, we get the title. And then you come to church, you come anywhere, hey, if you lead worship, if you sing amazing, then you're a singer. Like everything comes from what we do. Like what we do that like defines our identity, especially when it comes to the world. And which is why again, the whole question about tell me something, I'm like I struggle to answer because I'm like I don't want to limit myself with what I do. Like I am not what I do, I am who God says I am. And the thing with that is, because once you put yourself into a box of, hey, I'm a worship leader, you've already put yourself into a prison. Hey, I'm a worship leader, this is who I am. And anything you do outside of that, sometimes people are like, wait, that's not who I thought you were. And there's all these limitations. But the moment you take that off, you're like, you know what? Hey, I'm a child of God who expresses himself, myself, in different ways that God asked me to express in the different seasons and times that I'm in. When you realize that, it becomes a lot more easier. And it's not about what you do, it's more about who you are. And I think the good thing about God is, instead of making you work for identity, He gives it you freely first. Hey, the moment you believe in me, you're my child. That's your identity. You start from there, and from that place, you get to live life. Like I think it's the same way that when I was born into my family, like I didn't work for it. I didn't do anything for it. I was born into the family, and the moment I was born, I became a child. I didn't work for it. I didn't pray for it. I didn't do anything for it. But to get to the revelation that I'm really a child, I'm really a son, who where whatever my father has is mine. To get into that revelation, it takes time. But I'm not working to get there. I'm learning more about how really my father sees me. And when I know how my father sees me, that he trusts me with everything, that I can take his car without asking, I can do everything. When that revelation hits me, that's when I start walking it out. And it's the opposite of the world where you do everything to get to a title. In the kingdom, God's like, hey, I'm giving you everything, but I want you to learn and grow into it. As you grow in responsibility, I give you more and more things. So I think for me, it completely changed my way of thinking life. Like I used to, back in the day, how well I lead worship would determine how good I am, or how many people lift up their hands. I'm like, oh, everybody experienced the presence of God. People came and they appreciated me or something. All those things gave me identity. But and the sad thing about that is when you don't get that, you feel like you're a bad person. So at least for me, I think in my worship leading days in the beginning, I would lead worship, and man, it was horrible. Like I would detest coming out of it because I'm like, if it went good, it's amazing. If it went bad, I'm out for 2 days. I'm just lying down in bed. I'm just like, okay, let me play some games. I need to do something to make myself feel better, because how well I led, that I thought I led, was more about who I am.
Right.
And the more I realize, it doesn't matter. God loves me irrespective. Like, He just loves me. And I get to lead from that place, and not about my value, but about who He says I am. I started leading, and whether good days, bad days, man, God, I'm so grateful that I am your child. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how well I sang, whether I sang a wrong note, whether I made a mistake. I've made so many embarrassing mistakes, but I've learned to laugh and not even worry, because it doesn't define who I am anymore. And I think that's the most freeing thing. I wish, in our generation, if people understood, it frees us to start living life, not just trying to please people, but we start living, like really living and thriving in life.
I think that's actually a lot amazing what you just said, because a lot of people do not know what they want to do, and we are facing an identity crisis right now, like our entire generation, where they do not know how to find themselves. And I'm glad, like, I'm one of those guys who actually could figure out where God wanted me to do and where I wanted to be, and helping. I mean, thank God for my parents, my mentors, my friends, who all the church folks, everybody who helped me figure that out. And I feel like a lot of people still cannot understand that they have something bigger in life than what they have right now in their setup. And I want to go on, like, how do you recommend that people find their identity, like, and I mean, I definitely know reading the Bible is one of the best ways, but how do you think as individuals, like we, or maybe you or me, can actually help these guys figure out what their identity is?
So when you say identity, you're talking about purpose too, like what they're called
Yeah,
to do,
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yes,
the
yeah.
purpose. Many times I think our purpose is found. I think if we open our eyes, you want me to talk it from a church perspective or any perspective?
Any
How would you want me to?
perspective would be better.
Okay, so I think if we really open our eyes and look to the left and the right, we'll always see opportunities around us. And many times we're so focused on finding our purpose, and most of us never find it because you're trying to find our purpose instead of actually being available to fill in the gaps in the places that's around us. If you really ask people who have really made it in life, they never try to make it in life. They try to fill in the gaps in the spaces that were available around them, whether small, whether big, whatever. Hey, what's the need? What do you need? Let me fill that need. Whether it's in a company, whether it's wherever, in church, anywhere. Like I always think of one of the guys that I know. Uh, I love him. He used to play bass for us at church. He's no, he migrated, but the way he comes, he's like, "Hey, what do you guys need?" I'm like, "We don't have a bass player." He's like, "Awesome, I learned that up. What you need, I'll do that for you." And sometimes the place that we're supposed to fill in does not look like what we really want to be. It has no connection. But sometimes it starts with being in those places, because all those places develop something inside of you to take you to the place that you really want to go. Instead of looking for the big goal, instead of looking for the final purpose, if you can start filling out the small, small areas, without even us realizing, we get to the purpose. We start fulfilling purpose. It's not about, I heard this the other day. Many of us chase success, but it's not about success, it's about significance. What are we adding into the people around us? What value are we adding into the people around us? We try to become successful, and the sad thing is, no matter, success is again defined by comparison. Everybody's definition of success is different. But my thing is, where you're at today, where I'm at today, where all of us are at today, we all can add something of value and significance into somebody's life around us. And as we do that, it's not about money, but it's about people. When our focus shifts to people, that's where we start, walking into purpose.
And I think I remember like one of the things that one of my friends has always reminded me. He always says like this: "We are in the people business."
Yes.
And no matter what kind of business you do, you might be doing software companies, and you might be doing podcasts, and you might be doing worship stuff, or whatever we are doing. At the end of the day, a Christian or a person who follows Jesus, they're in the people business. And
Yes.
I think like when you say about people being intentional with people, being a significance with people, I think that's a lot that we need to relate upon, because I feel today's generation does not, we don't get intentional. We're more like transactional when it comes to stuff. We just want something, we get that, and then, like, that's it. And I don't think anybody has gotten anywhere in this world by being transactional. You always
Yes.
have to be intentional when it comes to things. It's not what you can get out of a conversation. It's more like what can you provide in that conversation. And when you,
Yes.
and not just in terms of conversation, but if you go for any of those aspects, I feel like that's what we would need to do. And the moment when we become intentional, I feel like there's a paradigm shift that happens. And because when we start to become intentional with people, others see that, and they also say, "Hey, let me try this out." Rather than being
Yeah.
transactional, let me try to be intentional. And the moment when you become intentional with people, there's a difference. And then people know that you're not just like coming to them for something, or you're just not using them, or the whole thing of strangers gets broken down into two people into friends. And I think that's one of the ways that like as we're in the people business, we need to learn. And I think that's something that we actually have to teach this younger generation, or like upcoming people, leaders, worship leaders, entrepreneurs, or creatives. This is something that they need to learn, that you need to be intentional with people, if you want to get if you want to see some change. And I see that a lot of people want to do change, but they don't know where to start with. And they're like, I want to do this, I want to do that, but they really don't know where to start it off, like, and how did you feel like that when you started off Overflow? Like, you're in a place where you don't know what to do, you're like confused, and you don't know how this is going to end up. Have you ever had that kind of situation?
Man, have that so many times. And I think those are good places to pause and just be like, take a step back. Okay, God, what do you want me to do right now? And I'll tell you something. So, the whole pandemic happened. It was not part of our plan. We were doing fine. And the pandemic happened. And I remember we completely stopped because it was there's so many things happening. And we couldn't come together. We couldn't do anything. So, for about 2 to 3 months, we had about 3 services. Had no idea what's going to happen. I'm like, God, what's going on? And then there's this one guy who kept asking, "Hey, can we have something? Can you do something? Can you do something? Can you do something?" I'm like, "Okay, man, he's annoying me." But he kept doing that, and then I took that to God. I'm like, God, this one person keeps telling me, he's like, "Can you do something? Can you do something online? You can do it on Instagram. You can do it here. You can do it there." And then God's like, "Josh, why don't you start something on Instagram?" I'm like, God, nobody does it on Instagram. Everybody does YouTube and Facebook. And God's like, exactly, do it on Instagram. Like, do a service, like, do something like that. He's like, yeah, Josh. Okay. And I'll be honest, we started it for the one person. And
Wow.
our team, we sat together, we said, hey, even if one person comes, we're going to do it. Like, sometimes, when we do things, we get caught up in the numbers. And we think it's all about numbers, but it's not about numbers, it's about impact. For me, I'm like, if we can impact people, not just get a lot of people, not get numbers who simply watch, we really want to make impact. And so, like, we're going to start for one person. Let's see how it goes. It was one person. So we had about, first time we had about 15, 20 people. I'm like, wait. So it's always going to exceed our expectation because we started off with one. We're like, we want to focus on the one because Jesus valued the one. And my policy is, if we start valuing the one, it starts there. We sometimes value the hundreds and the thousands, but we don't value the one. And I'm a big fan of, hey, let's value the one person that nobody really wants to talk to. Let's go after that one. Like because in our schools, in our colleges, in our workplaces, there's always that one person. There's those people that nobody talks to. They're always alone. If we can make an impact in that one person's life, that drags on because nobody wants to do that. We're sometimes, as you said, we're very transactional. We're so hey, I'm here to give you something if you can give me something. That's where the world is at. And if we as Christians, we can be like, hey, I don't want anything from you. I'm here to give you what I have. Because you know what? I have an unlimited supply that's coming from heaven into my life. And I don't need anything from you. I'm here to give you. I'm here to give you. Hey, you want love? I can give you all that I want. All that you want. When we come into that place, people will pause. They're like, hey, what's wrong with the guy? Even though we kind of use him, he's not leaving. He's okay with being used. He's okay with again, I'm not talking about abuse, I'm talking about use. Like, we talk to him only when we need him, but he's there. And he's always present. And we start being different. And that starts picking up. And the thing is, I think as leaders, sometimes it's good to start off with the one. Because when I look, we started off with the one, and now we have a consistent group of people that are coming regularly. But we didn't try to. We're not trying to change the entire world. We're trying to change the world that we are in. We're trying to start off with those small areas and spheres of influence that God has given us. We're like, hey, can we do something there? Instead of thinking about the whole world. And as we do that, slowly, 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 God starts expanding. God starts doing different things, and He starts adding people. But it always starts with the one. I think I was talking to one of my team yesterday, and they had to do some talking, and they were like, man, I'm so scared to talk to people. I said, hey, can I give you a tip? You're not talking to people, you're talking to one person. Can you talk to them as if you're talking to one person? It makes it so much easier. And that's something that I have to constantly do. Hey, it's not about people, it's one person. Every person is an individual listening in. And as a communicator, I need to speak to one person, not a group of people. And as I connect to the one person, it starts changing and it starts building. So, does
Man,
that make
that is
sense?
so good. That is so good. When I think like many times like I'm reminded of this one verse where in the Bible it says he leaves the 99 to go after the one, and it's always like even God is not after quantity. God is after quality, and I think today we need to let that sink in for a moment and try to think stuff from that perspective, because the more you go for a perspective of okay how many people, it's never gonna work out. It's gonna go for the one. That's what is needed.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing. I'll tell you where I learned this the hard way. So, we used to do Overflow in person. I just thought of it while you were talking, and we would have this list of people coming in. We had in 1 year over 140 people, brand new people who have never heard of Jesus, walk in. That's a
Wow.
huge. I'm talking about people. Okay, and for our Christmas event, we had 120 people, and out of that, 70 people were unbelievers, were people from schools, colleges, workplaces that our guys invited. Majority are outsiders, like a lot. I think about 50% of them. I forgot. They're outsiders. For most of our events, it's like that. And the thing is, we look back at the end of the year, we had over 150 to 200 people walk in, brand new, who've not come to Overflow before, first or second time. But only about 10% or even 5% of them stayed. And I remember, I'm like, you know what? We're doing something wrong. It's not that the numbers are wrong, but I, as an individual, cannot reach out to every single person. And that's when we're like, you know what? As we grow big, we should not grow thin. We need to have our strong core leadership where everybody connects to different individuals on different levels. It's not about one person and everybody spread thin. So so I think 1 year we're like, we're not focusing on people outside. We're going to develop leaders. That's all. Because one Josh can reach maybe 12 people. But if there's 12 to 20 different people, everybody can reach 10 to 12 people. And when we started doing that, I think that's when we started experiencing growth. People started staying because, when we grow big, we should never lose the whole connection. The whole relational value should not be lost. And that's something we're very keen on. hey, no matter how big we get, anybody should be able to approach anybody. Like, even when you look at Jesus, anybody could approach Jesus. And that's very, and as a leader, I'll be honest, it's sometimes very hard. I'm like, man, I'm an introvert. I need my space. I just want to be left alone. I have those moments, but man, I'm challenged. I'm like, man, Jesus, even the little kids, the synagogue leaders, anybody could approach him. And I think Jesus is probably the best leader that all of us can look and learn from. Like, he had his alone times, and he had his times where when he was with people, he was never away from people. So sometimes when we grow big, like as we grow in number, we should never lose the connection, the quality, the impact that we have on the one. Never losing the eye on the one.
And that's definitely one of the most important things that we keep in mind, because as we grow as an organization or as a church or as a community, the problem that it's the same thing. We see a lot of intake of people coming in, but we see a lot of pouring out where we speak to them, they worship and go, or more after they just leave. But we don't follow up enough to keep that circle tight enough so that they can come again. And it's not about numbers coming again over and over again, but it's more like how we can partner with them on a day-to-day basis, or what their needs are, what their goals are, and collaborating on that aspect. And today I feel like we do a lot of conferences, not just in the Indian community, but overall in every community in the world. There's a lot of conferences happening, there's a lot of stuff happening, events are happening, and but we don't see this follow up. We see this big time events happening, a lot of people come in and all those things happen, but after that there is no space where there you can communicate or you can collaborate with these people. And they just come for the next conference, that's it. And I feel like that's one of the greatest lacks that we have as a community in here in the US. And I think like you have taken over, like you saw the problem and you guys came up with the solution for that too. And that's like keeping it tight circle within the people who come in. And I think that's absolutely genius, because that's what is needed too. Because people love being a part of something big, but when it comes to small things, they only come there unless you're intentional. Otherwise they're never going to even pop up over there. uh, yeah, I think
Yeah,
you have
and
something to say.
like one of the things that I decided was, the people sometimes find it hard to say no to me. So if I invite them, hey, come for Overflow, they come because I call them. So one of the things that I did was, I'm not calling anybody. I would not call anybody. I would not invite anybody, because I'm like, I don't want you to come for me. I want you to come because you find something of value here. Like, I know, like, even when we started out, it was like 10 people, 12 people. I'm like, and half of them were kids. I'm like, no, we're not calling people, because if I call, they'll come because, hey, Josh is calling, let's go. But that defeats the purpose. It's about numbers again. So it took us a while in the beginning to just even get it started, but we were like, you know what, we're going to keep this grounded. It's not about numbers. Numbers matter, but that's not the main thing. We're going to see, because I always say I love food. Like, if there is good food, no matter what price, we'll drive, go and get the food because the food is good. So my thing is, many times we as churches, we blame people for not coming, and sometimes, like, even when I sit with my dad, we talk. I'm like, hey, let's take ownership. What can we change? What can we better? How can we grow? How can we be more sensitive to what God is telling us so that people connect to that? Because I think that's more of the challenge. And again, creating an atmosphere where people feel loved. Like, I think I've traveled to a lot of churches. Man, I go visit churches, and it's so awkward. I literally have to be on my phone because I feel like I'm alone. Like, after service, like, everybody's in their own bubbles, and I'm like looking into my phone. Somebody come and help me out of this thing. That kind of thing. I've been there, and I think from that place I've realized something. Like, we've set up, one of the cultures that we've set up is, like, we had to teach our team how to do that. Like, nobody ever stands alone. Like, you come here, I'll guarantee you'll never stand alone for more than 1 minute. There's always going to be somebody talking to you, making you feel welcome and loved, because, man, that's what church is about. Like, I can guarantee, because I'm like, our team, like, it was, we didn't know how to do it in the beginning, but we've come to the place, man, we genuinely love people. And we get 1 hour over here to not just preach a sermon, but to actually love people, to make an impact, to let you know, hey, you belong. And from there, build relationships. So it's not about me alone building a relationship. I'm pretty sure, like, if you come in, everybody's going to come and become your friend. Like, they would love to get to know you, and not because they have to, but because they really want to know you. And one of the rules is nobody stands alone. Like even if worship, we have this thing. Hey, if you're sitting alone in a seat, nobody's around you. One of us will go and sit next to you. Hey, we want to make you feel welcome, because in the world we live in, everybody's already alone. We are all alone. We live secluded lives, and we don't want you to feel alone when you come to church. It's about community. Community is very important. Like, so life is done in community. So again, a small thing of how we try to imply, because if people don't belong, they don't want to listen to anything you say. They need
Right.
to feel, they don't care. Like, you won't care about what I have to say if I don't have a relationship with you, if I don't
Right.
know you, if I'm not willing to have any conversation with you. I'm just trying to preach at you. You don't really care. You're like, okay, you can preach. I don't really care. So creating an atmosphere where they can feel at home, so they can hear and receive Jesus that we give them. I think that's very important too when it comes to churches.
Right.
Yeah, anything in the way.
Wow, man, that's amazing. Again, you're bringing some solid stuff over here, and I'm loving this because I think like one of the major things, like you said, it's not about numbers again, and how the ways that you guys have impacted a community in Muscat, where it's not even your home country, you're doing it in a different country where you're actually trying to do something that's it takes a lot of courage and takes a lot of action to do that. It's not easy, and so I'm pretty sure you had these moments where you're like, when God asked you to start this, you're like, are you sure about this? Kind of those moments where you're like, you had a doubt or self-doubt, like, is this gonna work, kind of thing. And and you guys have come a long way. But before we wrap up, I want to ask this one last question, and I want to point this out to the people too. What do you tell people who wants to do something like this, who wants something do something different like you have done right now?
Man, that's a good question. Like I always think about it. I didn't want. Okay, just a backstory. I wasn't. So somebody else was leading this. I wasn't leading it, and we hit one of our worst days where I was traveling in India, and I remember getting a text from the guy who was leading it. He's like, "Hey man, we're done. Let's just stop this thing," because basically the day before, they had all practiced. They set up everything, and two people came. There was two people. The worship team was leading, and the guy preaching and his family was sitting, and then it was the opposite. And I remember our entire team. We were like, we have portable church, so we're taking it, everything, setting up everything. Everybody comes after work. It's a lot of work, and you have two people that come in. And I remember, hey, we'll come back, we'll sit back together, we'll figure out what to do. And what we did was we shut everything down. We're like, we're not doing any work. We're just going to carry an acoustic guitar, sit together in the hall, and start worshiping together and talking. Nothing else. Let's take the pressure off. Started from there, and then we did a Christmas event at our home itself, like just over here. And we had about 53 people show up. Out of that, about five of them were unbelievers. And bam, it was there that we kick-started again all of a sudden from nowhere. And then again, this other person, his name is Sajjan. He was leading. He's an amazing guy, and I'm just support. I'll take care of everything you need. Just don't put me on stage. I'm just okay, living that. Just setting up everything. And one day I remember he calls me in February. He's like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing awesome." He's like, "Okay, just wanted to tell you something. I'm migrating to the UK in the next 3 weeks." I'm like, "Wait, what? You're migrating? That means I got a lead?" And it was just, I didn't get, it was not like I had any time to prepare. 3 weeks. And even the younger guys who are today my leaders, they were kids. And I was like, I called them, I was like, "Guys, no longer kids. You guys are going to start leading. Everything changes in 3 weeks. You have 3 weeks to prepare. You have 3 weeks to grow." Like, it was just on the spot. And uh, and it was hard. Like, if you really ask me, it was hard. But the thing is, whatever God asks you to do, He gives you the grace. And if there's one thing I would tell people is, hey, just be willing to serve anywhere. Like, y- before you do anything on your own, always serve somebody who's doing something that you want to do, and just honor their vision. Like, be a part, because when people see you doing that, you understand what it means to be on the other side. I think for me, my time in the US taught me a lot of that, because in Muscat, I'm a pastor's kid. When I came there, I was a nobody. And that really helped me learn and grow a lot, and see church from a normal person's perspective. Like, and I think sometimes that's very important. So I'm like, sometimes the best advice is, hey, wherever you're at, there's always some place you can serve. Like, I tell the kids who go from here, who travel to India, I said, hey, when you go, you're an amazing worship leader here, awesome. But wherever you go, you're going to be the guy putting the chairs. serve where nobody wants to serve. Like one of my leaders, he comes to me, he's like, "Hey Josh, I am very bad with people. Tell me what you want me to do, I'll do." I said, "I want you to welcome people." It's literally what I said. And
Oh
he
my
laughs.
gosh.
He's like, "Okay, I will." And I'll tell you something. He turned out to be the best guy at welcoming people.
Wow.
He was the best. But the thing is, he didn't know that. And normally, I think even sometimes we do that. We we put people in places they're not really comfortable because sometimes that brings out something out of us which we don't even know exists.
Right.
And getting outside our comfort zone is something I think we need to start doing. Like I'm somebody who push you outside your comfort zone. Like people who are around me know, you don't like singing songs. Okay, tomorrow you're singing. You don't like to do the introduction. Okay, you're doing it. Whatever you don't like, you're doing it. And I think I got again that training comes from CFNI because, uh, like they would push you outside your comfort zone. And I'm so grateful for that because that taught me that there's things inside of me which I didn't know existed. And I would say sometimes, even when your leaders ask you to do something that you're not really fond of, honor them, trust them, and listen. Because you'll see that, even when you honor them, even if it's not something you like, as long as it's not something that's wrong, God honors your heart. It's God who promotes, it's God who blesses, it's not your leader. There's a verse in the Bible, every promotion comes from God. And when
Right.
you're doing it for God, it makes it so simple. I'm not looking to a man, I'm not looking to a pastor, I'm not looking at a person. God, you call me to serve, you call me to put the chairs here. I'm going to put the chairs even if it's for the rest of my life. My job is to be faithful to you, to what you've asked me to do. And that's all I'm worried about. And the thing is, as we are faithful in what we are given, God honors, God promotes, not man. We don't work for man. We don't do things for man. The sad thing is, many times we're working for man's appreciation, for people to notice us, our leaders to notice us, and and I think that's where we get hurt. That's where we get sad. Man, I did so much and they didn't notice me. I'm like, hey, we're never doing it for people. We're doing it for God. He called us. He enabled us. He's empowering us. We work for God. God, I did it. What you've asked me to do, I've done. I'm not worried about the results. And I've just just one story that I just to end with. One of my friends shares is, it's like the delivery guy. Imagine I'm delivering pizzas. I deliver the pizza. I'm not going to stand at the guy's doorstep and be like, "Hey, how's the pizza? Hey, I made it." I'm not going to do that. My job is to deliver it and leave. Same thing. That's what we are called to do. We're called to be faithful in whatever area God has placed us. We don't want to take the credit. Hey, God's asked me to lead worship for the next 6 weeks. Awesome. I'm going to do that. I'm not worried about what people say. I'm not worried about whether they notice me, nothing. I'm going to be faithful in the area that I'm in. So that's something I'm like being faithful. Like every leader does not look for somebody who's talented. They look for somebody who's faithful. If you ask me, I love somebody who's, you know, just faithful. You don't have to be super talented. Are you faithful? Can you be trusted?
Yeah.
And I think it starts there.
Wow, that's I think that's amazing. When and I mean, since you were saying about faithfulness, I want to add on before we close out. And that thing, like, since we're talking about success too, and it's not about success, about significance. And one other thing that I want to say is, like, the world measures success in a different way than God measures it. And the way that God measures, I mean, the way that the world measures success is by profit and what you have achieved. And the way that God measures success is by your faithfulness.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the key to everything. And if you actually look at the story of the guy with the talents, God gives them all the talents, but he actually does see this one thing, like, he measures them by the faithfulness. He measures them by the investment in how they've been faithful in what they were given, and not
Yeah.
the one that who just went away and hid, but the guy who got one and then invested it and made a profit out of it, how he worked it out. And that's how God measures it. God sees it through the eyes of faith, how faithful you are with what you have been given. And many times we don't know how to do that. We are under the world's eyes, where we try to put a standard on our dreams and on our accomplishments the way the world sees that. And then at the end, you're just trying to prove something you want to be. And where this is where, like, the identity thing comes in, because in God you don't have to prove anything, because God has
Yeah.
already proven it for you. And you
Yeah.
there's you don't need to find a place for in God, because you already have a place.
Yeah.
You're already given a place, and given a title as a son or a daughter of God. And the moment you get that, that's when you think from that perspective, I think that's the whole key to it, because you don't need to prove to God who you are. You just have to be faithful to him. Whereas in the world, you have to prove they don't care about your faithfulness. They care about how much valuable you are to them, to a company, or as an asset in multiple ways. And I
Yeah.
think when you take that into perspective, things change. And I just want to add this thing to all that you were saying. I think and but yeah, man, this was amazing. The ways that the things that we spoke about. And I think, yeah, we've come to the end of a session, but it's amazing. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you guys have any questions, do reach out to us, or if you want to collaborate with Josh, just like hit him up on Instagram, or just like shoot him an email or something, and he'll be glad to respond. But yeah, but do check out what Overflow Muscat is doing on their Instagram, and also on Josh's Instagram as well. They're doing some amazing stuff there, and if you guys want to be a part of it, go for it. I think they're doing some crazy stuff, and there's gonna be a crazy move of God in these coming days, and I definitely believe that. So again, thank you guys, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you,
Stay
bro.
tuned for our next episode, and once again, thank you, Josh, for being here in spite of your tight, busy schedules and your recording sessions. You made time to be here, and man, I am honored, and I am so thankful for your time.
Thank you for having me here. It's an honor for me too. I enjoyed this. Like, I didn't notice the time go by. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys, thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day or great evening. Bye bye.